Hi, my name's Paul Cresswell. Welcome to Paul's Tackle Reviews. The purpose of this channel is to give you some tackle reviews and tips to help you with your fishing by an unbiased, unsponsored angler, and that's me. Today's video I'm going to talk about maggots, and I'm going to talk about how to keep them alive for a long time. I love maggots. When I started, early 80s, white maggots was the bait. That's all we ever had as kids. That's all we used. Things have moved on, but it's still a bait that everybody uses these days all year round. It's not just a winter bait when it's cold, and obviously on natural venues, and I go on the canal, you're going to need maggots at all times of the year. But even on commercials, I think you need to have maggots available all year round. In winter, it can be the bait when it gets very cold for F1s, for carp, just for getting a bite when it's really cold. But also, I would never go out fishing in the summer without some dead maggots. And invariably, if I start on the method feeder, the first hook bait I try is a dead maggot, because I think it gives you a good understanding of what's going to happen that day. If you start getting bitted out, then you know things. If you're not getting bites on maggots, you know it's going to be a tough day. So I go to the tackle shop every couple of weeks, and it's important, therefore, I've come up with a way of keeping the maggots live in the intervening periods between going to the shop. So I do have access to a fridge, and that makes a massive difference. Now, I don't use our main fridge. I have a drinks fridge in the utility room. It's got some drinks in, but basically it's my bait fridge for keeping things nice and fresh. So what makes maggots turn and start becoming casters and then not able to be used as maggots as such? And there's two things. One is air, exposure to the air, and warmth. So we all know if we take a tub of maggots on the bank in the middle of summer, it's red hot, they're going to start turning during that day. If we take a tub in winter, they're not going to turn as much. And what I found is a method of keeping maggots alive that's really good in winter. When the other week I had 2 weeks where I couldn't go because it was iced up, but I managed to keep the maggots live. I'm going to take you through the method, and then at the end I've got my 5 top tips for doing this, or if you're under 40, my 5 hacks for doing this. So first thing, buy your maggots, and I tend to buy maggots 2 to 1 more reds than whites. So I'll often buy a pint of reds, half of whites, and that will keep me going for a bit of time. Obviously, if you're going out and you're putting pints in, this method isn't for storing 6 or 7 pints unless you want to do an awful lot of work, and you're probably best getting them fresh if you're getting through that kind of volume. So I'm going to put my usual pictures down here. The first thing is, as soon as you get home, transfer them to a plastic bag, squeeze all the air out of the bag, and then I use those clip devices to seal the bag. But you can fasten a knot in the bag, but you're going to get through a lot of bags. So here's a photo. I've squeezed all the air out. There's about a pint of maggots in that bag, and I've put the clip on. So next, I keep that in the bait fridge. I put it straight in there and then leave it. And what I do is every 2 to 3 days, and it needs to be every 2 to 3 days, I get them out, I tip them onto my riddle over the bucket. I normally do it first thing put them out there and then let them go through the riddle. In winter, that's going to take a bit longer because the air temperature is colder, and I've even brought them and put them in the utility room because it's taken so long to do. But in summer, they'll go through fairly quickly. And then when they've all gone through, on the top of the riddle, you will have some dead ones, and you do lose a small percentage every time you do this process. Now, I tend to take those dead ones, put them in a little container with water, and they'll last 3 or 4 days, and they're perfect to use on the bank. You don't need to freeze them or do anything else. They're perfect dead maggots. When everything's gone through the riddle, put them back in the bag, squeeze the air out, put the clip back on and put it in the fridge. Now, you can do this multiple times because the maggots are basically coming round over a period of 3 or 4 hours, just staying alive, and then you're putting them back into that suspended state when they go in the bag and they go back in the fridge. So the other week I couldn't go out, and here's a picture of some maggots that are 3 weeks old. I kid you not, every 3 days they've been on the riddle, I've put them away, and I've just kept doing that, and I've got really usable maggots that I can go out anytime I want. So my top tips, and many of these I've learned from bitter experience. So tip number 1, put it in a bag, put the clip in, put it inside another bag. You don't need to fasten it, but so it's encased in another bag in case the first bag splits, because what you don't want is maggots going everywhere, and they do get out, they go absolutely everywhere. So I've got it in the first bag with the clip, second bag on top. I've then put it in a bake tub in my bake fridge. Here's a photo. So I've got like 2 backups, because the first time you get this wrong will be the last time you get this wrong, because you'll get a lot of flies. Number 2, when you've got your bucket, and before you put your riddle on, make sure the bucket is dry. So I cleaned my car like a good chap, and then had my bucket, put my riddle on, put my maggots in, went inside, came back out to the garage. They'd all got wet, and what do maggots do when they get wet? They get a whole new lease of life, and they can scale the walls of the bucket, and they were all over my garage. So make sure your bucket is dry. Number 3, personally, I don't like to mix old and new maggots. So if I've got some old ones, I've maybe had a couple of weeks, I've been to the shop, got some more, I don't tend to top up, because what you end up with is a mix, so that when you go on the bank, some are turning quite quick and some aren't turning. So I will only ever run 2 sets of bags at one time, but fresh maggots go through quickly anyway. Number 4, if you're going fishing, take what you need. If you've got a pint and a half of maggots and you're going for a couple of hours and you don't think you're going to need more than half a pint of maggots, take 3/4 of a pint of maggots and leave the rest in the bag. Or split it into 2 bags, maybe have one that you put into a tub and keep the rest on the bank in the bag. And then they don't have to be opened up. If you do need them, you can always tip them out, and if you're on the bank, they will come to life fairly quickly. And number 5 is be diligent. Don't skip these 2 to 3 days, because if you do, you'll just get a greater proportion of dead maggots, and you will risk kind of losing the whole lot if you don't do it every 2 to 3 days. Like I say, tip them out in the morning, leave them, come back in the afternoon, put them back in the bag. It's not too much effort. If you do want to make dead maggots, and obviously this method generates some dead maggots, but if you do want other ones, my personal preference is if I don't want many, I'll just put them in a plastic bag, put them in the fridge, in the freezer at 10:30 at night. When I go to bed, when I get up at 7, get them out, and they are perfect dead maggots. And I've shown that on one of my other videos. If you are doing a bigger batch of maggots, they do need longer in the fridge, in the freezer, because incredibly, if you do a big batch overnight, frozen, some of them will come round and come back to life. So you do need to give them maybe another day in the freezer. I hope you found that interesting, and I hope that's a useful tip on how to keep maggots alive, how to get value out your bait so you don't need to throw it away all the time. Of course, when you finish, you can always just put it in the freezer and have dead maggots. That's probably great to use in the edge anyway, particularly in the summer. Lots of videos on my channel. You want to give me a thumbs up, you want to give me a like. If you want to subscribe, you'll see more videos. There's over 50 now. I've got a few more things coming very soon. Until next time, tight lines.